Time for some Pelosi and some Chinese news.
Chinese news! Look up the Chinese news.
It comes from China. 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 It's not racist at all, no.
Not racist at all.
No.
Politico.com, in the headline here, White House clash with Pelosi over Taiwan spills into the open.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no. And this was actually brewing. There was a bunch of stories in April of this year talking about Pelosi and how she's, she shouldn't be going to Taiwan or talking about all this stuff. But here's more. It's all spilled out into the public, I guess. The Biden administration's dispute with Speaker Nancy Pelosi over her planned trip to Taiwan next month spilled into public view this week when the president himself asserted that the military, quote, thinks it's not a good idea right now, end quote. Behind the scenes, White House and Defense Department officials have already been quietly relaying the risks of a potential trip to Pelosi's office, according to 3 people with knowledge of the discussion. But since news of the trip emerged on Tuesday, the president's public comments have ramped up pressure on the speaker to address those concerns. Inside the Pentagon, officials believe the trip could increase tensions in the region as Beijing,
no kidding.
Yeah, as Beijing ratchets up rhetoric and flexes its muscles in the South China Sea. Pelosi is planning to use a military aircraft to fly to the island, which is standard for congressional delegations. But to the Chinese, quote, it looks like a military operation, said one
it
U.S.
totally
official.
Could be.
Yeah, it totally could be. And it could be. And they're telling us that it's not,
Right. Yeah.
So,
could, speaking of heist, this is Nancy Pelosi. She just has a big duffel bag of gold and rubies and diamonds. And she's using a military plane to smuggle them out of the country, go trade them for microchips and semiconductors in Taiwan. I'm on to you, Nancy.
Quite the theory.
I'm on to you.
Speaking on condition of anonymity to discuss the sensitive topic. That's the quote. It looks like a military operation. Quote, the military thinks it's not a good idea right now, President Joe Biden told reporters Wednesday when asked about Pelosi's travel. Quote, but I don't know what the status of it is. Well, couldn't that be said about a lot of things, President Joe Biden? You don't know what the status of it is.
He doesn't know the status of his own next bathroom break.
After initial declining to comment on Biden's remarks during her press conference on Thursday, Pelosi suggested that the president's comments stemmed from the military being, quote, afraid our plane would get shot down or something like that by the Chinese. What? Okay. Pelosi, what's going on? While not confirming the trip, she added that she has not heard that directly from Biden. Okay, so there's some weird public comment.
She's trying to
play.
do a secret trip is what she's trying to do.
Well, it's not so secret anymore. And let me just throw out my theory. I told you the theory before the episode, Basil. I think Pelosi, behind closed doors, Joe's theoretical discussion with Pelosi, Joe's Nancy, you can't do this. This is going to create tensions in China, America. And then Nancy would, clutching onto her bag of gold and wearing her African thing there. She says, I'm not going to start war. I'm going to help Xi. I think she's going to represent Xi to smooth over, try to get to sweet talk the Taiwanese as an American to kind of, hey, loosen up with the China thing. And, they're not going to do anything, violent or anything like that. As long as you negotiate, I think she's doing a little.
You think that she would rather Taiwan and China get along than the U.S.?
Well, yes. For the interests of her staying in power and doing the bidding of China, which I'm sure that we can document many things that she has done directly or indirectly to do that. But yeah, that's my theory anyway, that she's doing it on behalf of China, not so much. And that's why the U.S. military and, they're like, hey, what's going on? Because otherwise, they would know. Let's continue what the article says. Pelosi also pushed back on the notion that her trip would be interpreted by the Chinese as a provocation. Quote, It's important for us to show support for Taiwan, she said. Quote, none of us have ever said we're for independence when it comes to Taiwan. That's up to Taiwan to decide, end quote. As the Biden administration raises concerns about the trip, Republicans are backing up Pelosi. Let me repeat that again. As the Biden administration raises concerns about the trip, Republicans are backing up Pelosi, noting that she has a long track record of pushing back against China. Mm-hmm. Quote, what? Yeah, she has the backing of the Republicans. Quote, I don't always agree with her, but on this one, I applaud it. Rep. Michael McCall of Texas, the top Republican on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, said in an interview. Yep.
It's a bit like the Trump going to North Korea thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not a 1-for-1, obviously,
right, yeah.
But it's, that kind of move, this provocative move. The Republicans do love a nice geopolitical provocation. Mm-hmm. That is for sure.
Yeah. There was what article was it? I don't think we brought it to the show today, but there was another article with a potential Trump presidency, and it would be so awful. But in the article, and I forget what outlet, maybe it was like New York Times or one of these more mainstream outlets, but they were saying like, what Trump did with foreign policy is actually kind of a good thing, because with Biden in here begging for oil in Saudi Arabia,
they
pretty sad.
Get it now.
Yeah. Okay, so let's continue here. Quote, it's important that we show up in Taiwan and demonstrate to China that we're supportive. That's a very strong statement for a speaker to go to Taiwan. Again, this is a Republican saying that. But Beijing on Thursday made an explicit threat to retaliate with, quote, forceful measures if Pelosi goes ahead with the trip, which was initially planned for April, but was canceled after the speaker tested positive for COVID-19. Oh, that's what happened.
So
I remember them talking about that. Yeah. Quote, if the U.S. insists on going its own way, China will take forceful measures to resolutely respond and counter it. And we will do what we say, said Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin. Experts say U.S. should take Chinese officials at their word. Corey Shake, director of foreign and defense policy at the Conservative American Enterprise Institute, said that given all the factors in play, quote, the Chinese may do more than just complain if Pelosi goes ahead with the trip. Quote, this could really be consequential, she said. That's the other part of it. Is Pelosi going to start World War III?
Again, just provocative. Mm-hmm. Kind of like Biden's literal provoking of Russia going into Ukraine.
An administration official said officials, quote, provide the speaker with information and context that we believe is important for her to have before she travels overseas. She makes her own decisions. It's an administration official. What? They're kind of like letting her. Isn't this weird? There's a lot of weird things about this going on. I think this might lead to something, but who knows?
I'm tempted to make a
red book prediction.
not, I wouldn't put it in the red book, but I mean, this is perfect for, we're at war already with Russia.
Yeah.
Well, it's a proxy war.
Proxy war, yeah.
We have a potential proxy war brewing in Taiwan. They could either shoot down Nancy Pelosi, and that would be a direct act of war.
World War III, we're on.
Right.
Yeah.
Or there could be...
She can not even be in the plane, by the way.
I'm thinking something more like somehow she can't land in Taiwan. Like there's a mysterious explosion at the Taiwanese airport.
Oh, is this when the UFOs get released to save Nancy?
No.
Oh, okay.
They have to divert to China.
Oh, great.
To land the plane.
Yeah.
And then Nancy Pelosi is kind of like de facto
invading China,
held hostage by China. Like, we're glad you didn't crash, but you had to land at one of our airports
illegally,
and this actually is illegal. So we need to detain you. Boom. Nancy Pelosi is more or less held hostage by China, and then is used as like a bargaining chip for Taiwan or something like that.
Something, yeah.
I mean, there's like something like 200 Americans right now who are de facto detained by China.
Right.
Just like not allowed to leave. They might not be in jail, but they're in there and they are not allowed to leave.
Let's hear from Mark Milley on this. He didn't say much, but here's what it says in the article. A spokesperson for Joint Chiefs Staff Chair General Mark Milley. Mark Milley didn't even have time.
A very extremely short comment, which is no comment.
Yeah. On Pelosi's trip, but similarly noted that the general typically provides quote unquote facts to decision makers. Quote, normally when, quote unquote facts. Why do you put parentheses around the word facts? Mm-hmm. Quote, normally when the chairman briefs any decision maker, he discusses facts bearing on the problem, intelligence related to the mission, the logistics, and the military requirements to conduct the mission, end quote, Colonel David Butler said. News of the planned visit comes as DoD officials are increasingly alarmed at the uptick of Chinese military aggression in the Pacific. In one incident, a Chinese fighter jet buzzed a U.S. Special Operations C-130 aircraft in June, Politico reported. In recent months, Chinese ships and warplanes have also harassed Australian and Canadian surveillance planes. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy kicked off the world's largest maritime exercise off the coast of Hawaii on June 29th. The Rim of the Pacific exercise, which will run through August 4th, involves 26 countries, dozens of warships and aircrafts, and tens of thousands of personnel training together in and around Hawaii and Southern California. We know what happens when there's drills, usually, right?
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Biden is expected to speak with his Chinese counterpart, President Xi Jinping, by the end of the month, the U.S. president said Wednesday. But Shake argued that Beijing's increased aggression is in due part to Biden's quote-unquote loose statements about U.S. obligations to defend Taiwan in the event of an invasion. Quote, the president 3 separate times has mistakenly said the U.S. has an obligation to defend Taiwan. The president mistakenly said the U.S. has an obligation to defend Taiwan. Interesting. 3 times. Stripped away the context of the one China policy, Shake said, quote, this potentially leaves the Taiwanese in a terrible place of us having a declaratory policy that the president then won't back up with military force.
Mm-hmm.
Republican lawmakers see the Biden-Pelosi row as an example of the White House's misguided fear of provoking an adversary. And on and on and on it goes. And, we can continue on here, but, short on time. You guys can continue and finish the article.
No, that's very interesting. Why would they? They're just setting up. It feels like a setup.
It completely feels like a setup. And, Pelosi wearing green. She's wearing yellow the other day. I don't know, man.
What does the yellow have to do with anything?
Yellow, man. Asians. I'm just kidding. I don't know what the she's going to China, or she's going to Taiwan. I mean, not China. She's going to Taiwan, so she's got a signal. So wear that yellow suit.
Well, she said herself, it's supposed to be a signal. I'm going to Taiwan to signal to China that we're serious. Is this Bloomberg article the same threat? China issues private warnings to U.S. on Pelosi's Taiwan trip.
Yeah. This is BNN Bloomberg.ca. I think it's like a Canadian.
Well, this is interesting. China issued strong private warnings to the U.S. government about a planned trip to Taiwan by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, which included a possible military response.
Right.
So a possible military response against who? Against the U.S., against Taiwan. The warnings were much stronger than those made previously when China wasn't pleased with U.S. policies and actions related to Taipei, the paper said, citing unidentified people familiar with the issue. China's foreign ministry earlier this week officially vowed to take a resolute and strong response to any Taiwan visit by Pelosi, which was reported to be next month, et cetera, et cetera. This is interesting. Her trip would be the first by a House Speaker to Taipei since 1997. Pelosi's office didn't respond. Yeah. Military response. What type of military response could they possibly do? Blowing up an airport, man.
Something. I don't know, but
she's going to get trapped. We're going to go to war to get Nancy back. There's going to be movies about it.
Save Nancy?
Saving Private Nancy.
Oh my gosh.
This would be a way. maybe she's so tied up and there's so much pressure and heat on her for the insider trading that she robbed a Brinks truck.
This is her exit strategy.
Yeah, and she's going to go and fake a plane crash in Taiwan.
You know, that is not out of the question, by the way. That kind of thing, these people up at the top there, that's how they think. They want to get out of the spotlight, because the spotlight ain't fun, you know, especially
it's fun for a while.
Yeah, it's fun for a while. Maybe you may make some money, but the way things are turning right now, people like Pelosi should be shaking in her boots.